Hey everyone, this is Josh from Dungeoneer's Pack, just putting together a quick video from this weekend's Giant live stream. If you would like to join me on the live streams, I'd stream every Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Hope to see you there. Now let's get to the video. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the first one. I want to start off with my favorite, which is the Path of the Giant Barbarian. This one is interesting. This is very similar to the Rune Knight, and what I mean by this, they have two really big ideas, and they kind of like kit bash them together. So we see this with the Giant Power when you choose your path. You're gonna learn Giant, and then you get a Druidcraft or Thaumaturgy cantrip, and then you get Giant's Havoc. When you rage, you make a successful range attack with a thrown weapon using Strength. You can add your rage damage bonus to the attack's damage roll, and then your reach increases by 5 feet, and if you're smaller than large, you become large. Along with anything you're wearing, if there isn't enough room for you to become large, your size doesn't change. The cool thing, and this is like one of the things I think that really sticks out, we're finally getting a ranged Barbarian. Barbarians suffer from range. They're really bad at it, and this says, take your thrown weapon, toss it, and go ahead and add your rage modifier to it, which is pretty sick. And that's fun. It plays into this power fantasy. I'm this big guy that just picks up rocks. I pick up things and just chuck it. Let's jump into Elemental Cleaver. The big thing with Elemental Cleaver, this is where I feel like there's a disconnect with some of the power fantasy. I know Wizards really leans into Giants being this elemental force that is kind of like the elemental counterpart to dragons, but I don't necessarily think of elemental damage tied to them. I know there's elements tied to the giants, but I don't see like a storm giant. When I think of a storm giant, like they're throwing lightning bolts, they're throwing thunder everywhere. No, I think they're highly intelligent. They have a bit of precognition. They're able to have a lot of foresight, and you don't see that out here. And the same thing with fire giants. I don't see them throwing fire stuff around. I see them crafting. They're very smart. They're very creative. There's none of that stuff is in here. So there's some cultural giant stuff that they could play with, and they don't. So it's like it doesn't feed into some of the lore and the narrative a little bit that they could expand into and add more roleplay elements into the class, into a subclass and for your character. But it's still not a bad feature. This is still a cool feature. When you enter your rage, you can infuse one of your weapons that you're holding with either acid, cold, fire, thunder, or lightning damage. I don't understand acid at this point though, because have you heard of an acid giant? While you wield the infused weapon during your rage, the weapon's damage type changes to the chosen damage type. It deals an extra 1d6 damage of the chosen type when it hits, and it gains the thrown property with a normal range of 20 and a long range of 60 feet. And as soon as you throw it, it comes back to your hand, whether it hits or misses the target. The infused weapon's benefits are suppressed while a creature other than you are holding it, so you can't infuse it and hand your weapon off. Again, Elemental Cleavers is an awesome feature. I kind of wish this was its own subclass with this Elemental Barbarian that rages, and then they're bound to some sort of element, and they can infuse their weapon with it, and then they can throw it. That is such a cool fantasy that this doesn't feel giant to me, but it feels it's cool enough that it should be its own thing. Yeah, this feature could play well with a Tempest Cleric. Yeah, Elemental Cleaver, perfect with a Tempest Cleric. The thing is, like, this is sort of like power fantasy, right? Tempest Cleric is the closest thing to Thor we're gonna get in 5th edition. Yeah, I agree with you, Steven. You bring up a good point. I think for the Rune Knight, because this ties into different runes, the different types of giants, we don't see it here. It's just some elements. Question from 343 Burning Legion. How would you feel about Elemental Cleaver Mighty Impel being swapped? So let's get into Mighty Impel. Your connection to Giant Strength allows you to hurl both allies and enemies on the battlefield. As a bonus action while raging, you can choose one medium or smaller creature within your reach and move it to an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of yourself. An unwilling creature must succeed on a strength saving throw, which your DC is equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength modifier to avoid the effect. If at the end of this movement the thrown creature isn't on a surface or locate that it can support, the creature falls taking damage as normal and landing prone. So what I want these switch, I would rather have Elemental Cleaver be its own dedicated subclass feature at level 3 that gets some cool stuff. Mighty Impel, on the other hand, woo! Fastball special. I know when this came out, people in the Discord were talking about this. Shout out to Drunken Yoda because he brought this up, and he's like, "Oh, you can fastball special people," which is sick. But immediately I thought, I was like, I'm gonna rage. I'm gonna grab an enemy. They're gonna fail the strength check because you're gonna have advantage on this, and then you're gonna chuck them up in the air 30 feet, and then they're gonna drop, and they're gonna be prone, and then your allies are gonna get to wail on them with advantage. So they'll take 3d6 damage, and then your allies can follow up and just beat the hell out of them while on the floor. It's cheesy. I agree with you, Steven. It depends if your DM allows you to throw your enemies up. But at level 10, this is a martial class that's competing with spellcasters. And at this point, spellcasters can have mass status inducing effects. And it's not like you're going to be chucking bosses either when you look at this. Like, right? You're not going to be chucking bosses. You're going to be kind of chucking annoying enemies. So yeah, I really like Mighty Impel. Ronan brings up another cool thing. This is requires some coordination. action. Coordinate with your allies, toss them into some web, a firewall, or cloud of daggers, to name a few. Yeah. The last feature for this is Demiurgic Colossus. While you're raging, your reach now increases to 10 feet. You increase to huge, and you can use Mighty Impel to move creatures that are larger or smaller. And then your Elemental Cleaver increases in damage. Now becomes 2d6, which is a nice little bump for the Barbarian, since they have like damage fall off like towards the end game. So the big elephant in the room when it comes to this is the reach. We got to talk bugbears, because everybody's talking about bugbears. Most powerful thing you'll be able to do with it, you're just going to increase your range, increase that area of control. But it's also at level 14, and it's a very, very specific build. See, Bob the World Builder, Bob put out a video, I saw that too, that you can increase this up to 45 feet. You have to build it in a certain way to really, really cheese it. It's a late game combo. Mind you, not everybody's going to get into this level 14 range. This is going to be the last thing you're going to be able to do, or you're not going to get to do it at all. Their whole character based on a late game combo, I don't think it's a good way to build. It's interesting. It's fun to do it on paper, but when your campaign might end before then, which is kind of frustrating, right? You're never going to play into that fantasy, and you're not going to feel like you did the cool thing you've been wanting to do. For me, is just like a big power fantasy fulfillment. Overall, I don't think the Path of the Giant Barbarian's like super powerful, but it's fun. Like, this looks like a fun subclass that matters more to me than just trying to do the most broken thing. It's the Barbarian playing a different way. Like, you're more incentivized to pick up and throw stuff. Is this reflavorable? Yes. Immediately what it comes to mind, one of the big reflavors, Jinx brought it up, you can reflavor this whole thing as dragons. So you turn into some Godzilla level threat. When you rage, instead of giant power becomes draconic power. Instead of getting a breath weapon, you can channel the elemental power and elemental magic of a dragon. In terms of where these fit in 5th edition settings, in Forgotten Realms, a Goliath, you're a dwarf with giant ancestry, you play in a Storm King's Thunder campaign, it's kind of like right there. This fits perfectly in there. If I'm thinking Eberron, you touch a giant magical device that transforms your body. Maybe you're part of an expedition. In Ravnica, this is super easy. There's giants exist in Boros, they exist in Gruul, and they also exist in, I believe, the Orzhov, but there obviously isn't a giant race option. So just pick Goliath, reflavor that as your giant, and then just take the subclass. Heroes, I think you can get away with this one as being reflavored as you're a Nyxborn or you're a child of one of the gods themselves. I think this kind of plays in that fantasy, especially this giant power growth. This feels very Herculean. Elemental Cleaver, you're just tying to this to one of the gods. Do cold, okay, you're tied to Thassa. Fire, you're tied to Perforos. Thunder, I believe that can go up to Kyranos, and lightning can go to Kyranos, but also you can flavor lightning as Heliod. Acid, that can go to Nylea. Summer's already saying some Strixhaven stuff. Quandric student, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, actually, you can see this as a Quandric student. The giant size stuff is actually tied to you using formulas and pretty much the math, and you're pretty much making yourself grow there.